Hey y'all, hope you guys are doing so well. So I am actually rummaging through a recipe book that I made a while ago to find a recipe because the kids started back to school today and I am so sad. So they got an extra long break. They were home for over a month and man, I just kind of got used to them hanging around. And so they went to school today. They were so excited. I mean, kids shot up so early. Charlie had a little checklist. Bless her, it was so sweet. And so I wanted to do something sweet for them when they came home. And so I thought I would make them a dessert. And their most requested dessert are my sourdough discard brownies. Charlie actually helped me create this recipe. And so that's really sweet. And so I'm going through and I'm trying to find my recipe real quick. So I'm going through, I just found my recipe and now I'm gonna make it with you guys. It's actually really simple because you don't have to activate your starter. If you keep your discard in the fridge, this is great. It takes about 35 minutes to make, but other than that, it's pretty simple. So you're gonna need some butter. You're gonna need a mix of chocolate. And so I like to do like cocoa nibs, you know, semi-sweet chocolate chip morsels, and then a few different organic you know, chocolates, whether that's like a hazelnut or something, I don't know. I just think it's really fun to kind of mix all these different chocolates together. Then you're gonna need cocoa powder, vanilla extract, eggs and egg yolk, some cane sugar, some coconut sugar, your sourdough discard, some flour, and some salt. So more than likely, if you want to make some sort of brownie or stuff like that, you know, if you stock your pantry pretty well, you're usually always going to have most of the ingredients that you need. So I'm going to collect all these ingredients real quick. I'm gonna fill my water and we're gonna get busy. I have missed hanging out with you guys. I'll tell you that right now. I've been doing my content a little bit differently. If you have not noticed, I'm doing a lot of how-to videos, but I have certainly missed vlogging with you guys. So this is just kind of a fun vlog, us in the kitchen, kind of relaxed, just hanging out with you guys like the good old days. So I'm pretty excited. Let's hop back to it. All right, on the front end of this too, you are gonna need a 9x9 baking dish, but I will tell you the secret to really good brownies, you guys, is cooking it in a cast iron. I love making my focaccias in a cast iron. I love baking my cakes in a cast iron, my brownies. I don't know, it just makes it taste so much better. I find that it gets a crisper edge, which I really like, and then a super gooey inside. So you can use a 9x9 baking dish. For me though, I'm not measuring. I'm just gonna grab a cast iron that's hanging on the wall, and that'll work just fine. All right, you guys, so I've got my saucepan here and we're going to measure out the butter and the chocolates melted on the stove. We'll add in the cocoa powder, I believe, and the vanilla extract. And just to avoid, you know, dirtying up another dish, I'm just gonna go ahead and measure it in the saucepan and then take it over to the stove. So you need 113 grams of butter. So I'm just adding that in good chunks at a time. I don't know about you guys, but we go through more butter than anything else in our house. This is a recipe that I crafted with Charlie. I mentioned that earlier. So, nice little family heirloom recipe to pass down. All right, so I got a little more butter, totally fine. And then you're gonna do that 340 grams of chocolate. So like I mentioned, you could just do all of one type of chocolate. I just like mixing it up a little bit. So here I have a sea salt almond, which looks really delightful. So I'm gonna break that up into some chunks and add a little bit of a crunch. Since this does have the crunch, I think I'm gonna omit the cocoa nibs, which is what I usually do. Alrighty. So here I just have a bag full I'm gonna dump in there. And that gets us pretty close to that 340 grams, but when I was searching for my chocolates, I found a butterscotch, which I happen to be a massive butterscotch fan. So I'm gonna actually add a little bit more just to give a fun little flavor. So I'm probably gonna end up at about 375 grams. Again, this is just a base recipe, but you can totally play off of it, do whichever, you know, you can add whatever chocolate you want. You can add more, you can add less, it doesn't matter. There's that ability to kind of play around. All right, so now I'm gonna add my 10 grams of vanilla extract. And I'm gonna add 40 grams of the cocoa powder. Then we'll take it over to the stove and melt it. The good thing about this too is you can kind of get this part done and then just set it aside while you work on building out all your other ingredients. All right, I got my 40 grams. We're gonna go head over to the stove and start melting it. I do like to keep mine on that medium high. I don't know about you guys, but I have those vivid memories as a kid of those recipes that reminded me of childhood. I remember, you know, Thanksgiving and Christmas, my Mama Jean would make homemade hot chocolate and hot cocoa, as she called it, and that's one of those vivid memories. I can even remember the pan that she made it in and just the layout of her kitchen. Like, I have very, very detailed memories of that. And then every year, my papa would make, I think they were called tea cake cookies with us, and it was something every single year. I remember there's a lot of us cousins, and he would just be, you know, so sweet, and he would take so much time just to teach us and let us make them. And I just kind of have those memories burned into my brain of childhood, and they're sweet, right? Like, it takes me back to the layout of my Mama's kitchen, of the recipe that she wrote down when she made that cocoa and those tea cake, you know, cookies. And I'm hoping, you know, that by making these recipes, usually I make this with the kids. Today it's a surprise. But my hope is that I'm crafting these memories for them, and they're gonna have vivid memories of, you know what, there's that one time me and Mom came up with a sourdough brownie recipe, and she used to make it for me. And hopefully one day she makes that for her kids, and maybe her grandkids. And so it's more than just coming in the kitchen and whipping up something real quick. That's why I always like to just extend an invitation to my kids, because yeah, I want to cook them good food. Yeah, I want to make them nice dessert when they come home from school for the first time, you know, but I also just want to create those memories with them that are going to last for a lifetime. And that's really what I'm trying to do in the kitchen. You guys can see here, the butter's starting to melt. And once you've noticed that the chocolate chips are fully melting, if you are using cocoa nibs, it's not going to be super smooth, because cocoa nibs are going to add a little bit of a crunch. So I can, you know, even see here that there's some chunky pieces. It's not actually from the chocolate not melting, it's just from those almonds that are in there. So I'm just taking that into account. But doesn't that look so good? So once it melts really well, you're just going to turn the heat off and let this sit while we go and combine the rest of our ingredients. All right, now that we've made our way back over here, I have my bowl on my scale, and we are going to start measuring out some of our other ingredients. So we have our sugar, which we have got 200 grams of cane sugar and 100 grams of coconut sugar. So I just ran out of coconut sugar, so I'm just gonna do 300 grams of cane sugar. Now, coconut sugar is really good for baking. It adds kind of a really nice texture and a really nice flavor, but if you don't have cane sugar, if you don't have coconut sugar, just submit it with whatever type of sugar you have. And so for me, like I mentioned, that's just gonna be, you know, 300 grams of just your standard cane sugar here. We will pour that in. So now I'm gonna take 2 eggs and just beat them in the bowl with the sugar. So 1 egg in. All right, so I'm gonna give this a good mix. Get those eggs nice and beat. You could use, you know, a stand mixer, a hand mixer. You guys know I like to knead everything by hand. I am actually using, you know, a spatula this time, so that's nice. So you can see here we've got this nice pudding-like consistency with the egg and the sugar. So now we're gonna go in and add our sourdough discard. Now, if you do not have a sourdough discard and you only have an active starter, that's okay. It is gonna change the structure of your batter a little bit, but I'd actually overstarted some of this, so I was like, you know what, this actually worked out perfect, and I didn't have to pull from any of my reserves. So we're gonna use 125 grams of that. Clear my scale here. So that is perfect. Now I'm gonna go grab that chocolate mixture off the stove, pour it in here, and then we're gonna mix this all really well. Y'all, this smells so good. So now we're just gonna mix this all really well. The goal here is to make sure that that sourdough starter has really kind of broken down. You know, think about when you're making a loaf of bread and you have the sourdough starter in the water, and you really want that sourdough starter to be distributed well, because it does alter some things. Now granted, we're not letting this do a bulk rise or anything like that. It doesn't have a long fermentation, but you still want it to be distributed evenly, because it is gonna have that nice sourdough taste to it. I have found in my experience, these are some dense brownies, you guys. Especially, I tend to always use an active sourdough starter because I've always like if I overfeed my starters, it's like, oh, I'm gonna use this to make sourdough brownies. So I find that I have a nice little, you know, dense batter, but honestly, you know, matched with some homemade ice cream or some whipped cream, y'all, it tastes so good. All right, so you guys can see here, just continuing to get it all nice and incorporated, which it is. I mean, all this looks distributed well. I can see the chunks of almond, which is always fun. Now I'm gonna add 120 grams of all-purpose flour. And I'm gonna add 5 grams of sea salt. Now, I will tell you, if you're working with a scale and it's really low numbers like that, a lot of times it won't pick up. And so for me, I usually always eyeball it, because if you're waiting on the scale to register it, you're probably gonna over salt. So just a few good handfuls, pinches here is probably fine. And now we will go ahead and mix this all really well. If it is too gooey and dense for your liking, you could easily add some more flour in here if you wanted to. I personally really like that nice, dense, chewy brownie. So I think this is the perfect combination. Obviously, I created it. I created the recipe, but it is one of those recipes that you can easily modify based off of your own taste buds, which is one thing I really love with sourdough. Is most of the recipes I do and I teach you guys, they can be altered however they need to, which is always just really nice. You do want to make sure that you already have your oven preheated to 350 degrees. All right, once your oven is preheated and you have your dough and batter all mixed, you're gonna grab your baking dish and just oil it well. So I'm using a cast iron, and I'm actually just gonna put butter on here. Most of the oils that we use are flavored in the sense of like, it's a garlic olive oil, or you know, a Tuscan herb, something that's not gonna taste well with brownies. So I just take some butter, throw on the bottom of the pan, and it has always fared me really well. All right, once you have greased your pan, now we just get to pour in the batter. Look how delicious this looks, you guys. I am trying to get all my baking underway, you guys, because we are about to be in our busiest season for the farm. And so I know those days of luxury, being in the kitchen and just cooking and not being outside constantly, is quickly coming to an end. So I have been trying to soak up all this extra baking, you know, really that I can, because I know we are approaching a really busy season. We are just going to be eating a lot of just quick, fresh, you know, food from the garden, which I'm gonna love. But I find that I don't get to make as much specialty stuff like this throughout those long summer months. So I'm just spreading it evenly here. I do like to go through and take whatever vessel I am cooking it in and just give it a couple good shakes to even everything out. All right, once that is done, you guys, it is going into the oven at 350 degrees. You're gonna leave it in there about 35 minutes. Like I mentioned, these are kind of dense, kind of gooey, so you'll notice that the outside becomes nice and crispy first, and then it takes the middle a little bit longer to completely bake through. For me, in my range, it's about 35, 40 minutes, but I would just set a timer at that 35-minute mark to start checking on it, and then you can kind of adjust how you need to based off of how your range cooks. So let's go pop this in the oven. All right, into the oven we go. Nobody judge my dirty oven. All right, you guys, I just pulled these brownies out of the oven, and let me tell you, they smell. All right, so even though I did make these for the kids, I am gonna cut into them to show you guys. You can kind of hear that crunch on the outside. And then we'll see that the inside's super nice and gooey. Alrighty. Oh man, it's like falling apart. This is so lovely. Check that out. So nice, gooey inside. Go ahead and try it. We have a nice, crusty outside here. So I'm already trying it, but let's give it another good honest try. These are so good. I got a nice little crunch from the almond, so that's really nice. With some homemade whipped cream, you guys, these are gonna be so good. So now I'm gonna have to hide them for myself so I don't eat anymore, and I can actually save them for the kids, which is why I decided to make these. I've got a massive sweet tooth. And a lot of times I can like curb that sweet tooth with like I eat a ton of broccoli or like raw cashews for me. That kind of helps, and sometimes Lara bars. But whenever there's actual sweets in the house, you gotta watch out because mom is gonna steal them. All right, friends, thanks for hanging out with me in the kitchen as I made these delicious sourdough discard brownies for my girls. My kids really appreciate fun little surprises like this that I do for them. But thanks for hanging out with me. I'll talk to you soon.